Before this story truly unfolds, I want you to pause with me for just a second. If you believe that one honest conversation can quietly change the direction of an entire life, if you believe that love doesn't always arrive with fireworks and applause, but sometimes reveals itself in the quietest, bravest moments, and if you believe that the hardest conversations inside a family are not meant to break it apart, but to reveal how strong its foundation truly is, then take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel. Because the stories shared here are not just stories. They are reflections of real hearts beating behind closed doors. They are the words people rehearse in their heads for years before daring to say them out loud. They are the silent battles fought in bedrooms at midnight. The glances across dinner tables. The moments when everything changes, not with a shout, but with a whisper. And this one begins in silence. But it will not end there. So listen closely. The rain that evening did not rage. It did not roar or crash against the house with violent insistence. There was no thunder splitting the sky, no lightning demanding to be seen. Instead, it fell gently, soft, steady drops drifting from the gray sky like uncertain thoughts. They tapped against the kitchen window with patience, not demanding entry, just waiting. Each drop sounded like a careful knock, as if the night itself wasn't entirely sure it was welcome inside. The world beyond the glass blurred into watercolor streaks, street lights melting into gold smudges, sidewalks dissolving into shadow. Inside the kitchen, everything felt smaller. Laura sat at the narrow wooden table she and her husband had bought years ago when Ethan was still small enough to swing his legs under it. Her hands were wrapped around a ceramic mug of tea that had long since surrendered its warmth. No steam rose from its surface anymore, but she stirred it anyway, slowly, thoughtfully, absent-mindedly. Not because the tea needed stirring, because she did. The overhead light cast a tired yellow glow across the room. It illuminated the center of the table, but left the corners dim where shadows collected like thoughts no one wanted to speak out loud. The refrigerator hummed softly in the background. The clock ticked. The rain whispered against the glass. It was the kind of evening that felt heavy without explanation. The sky outside had been gray since morning. The kind of gray that presses against your chest without telling you why. Laura had woken with that same weight. It wasn't a clear worry, not something she could name or write down. It was quieter than that, heavier. It sat just beneath the surface of her awareness like a ripple under still water. Mothers know this feeling. It doesn't come from evidence. It doesn't come from logic. It comes from somewhere deeper. A tightening in the chest, a shift in the air, a silence that feels wrong even when nothing has happened yet. And all day she had felt it. Now, across the kitchen, her reason sat only a few feet away. Ethan, 17 years old, tall, bright-eyed, normally loud without even trying to be the kind of boy whose presence filled a room. The kind whose laughter traveled down hallways and bounced off walls. His energy usually made silence uncomfortable. But tonight he looked smaller. He sat at the kitchen counter, shoulders slightly hunched as if he were trying to fold himself inward. The sleeves of his dark hoodie were pulled halfway over his hands, hiding his fingers, guarding them. His phone rested beside him on the countertop, untouched. That alone sent a sharp, quiet alarm through Laura's chest. Normally, she had to remind him twice, sometimes 3 times, to look up from a screen, to join the present moment, to make eye contact. Tonight, he hadn't picked it up in nearly 20 minutes. His laughter had been missing for days. His voice had grown softer, his footsteps quieter, his presence distant. Laura pretended to focus on her tea, but every instinct she possessed was trained on him. She noticed the way his jaw tightened when he thought she wasn't looking. The way his foot tapped lightly against the cabinet in a restless rhythm. He clearly didn't want anyone to see. The way he inhaled deeply, then exhaled slowly, like someone preparing for something difficult. This wasn't ordinary teenage moodiness. This was waiting, and it frightened her. Minutes passed without a word. Not the comfortable silence shared by people who understand each other deeply. Not the kind that feels safe. This silence thickened. It pressed into the room. It filled the spaces between breaths. It lingered in the corners with the shadows. Laura resisted the urge to fill it. She had learned something over years of motherhood. Not every silence needs to be fixed. Some silences need to be survived. Then, Mom! The word cracked through the quiet like fragile glass. Laura looked up instantly. Yes, sweetheart. Ethan swallowed hard. His eyes remained fixed on the floor. His fingers gripped the edge of his sleeve, twisting the fabric as though letting go might unravel everything he was holding inside. Can I talk to you about something? Laura did not answer immediately. She set her mug down slowly, carefully, afraid that any sudden movement might scare the moment away. Then she stood and walked toward him, her steps measured steady. She knelt beside his chair until they were at eye level. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft. Come, safe. Of course you can, she said. Whatever it is. I'm here. She reached out and brushed a loose strand of hair from his forehead. Her thumb lingered there just a second longer than necessary. A silent message. You are not alone. He still didn't look at her. Instead, he stared at the floor as if it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. Seconds stretched longer than they should have. The rain continued its gentle rhythm outside. Then, his voice trembled. I think I might be gay. The words did not explode. They did not echo. They did not demand attention. They simply landed between them. Quiet, raw, vulnerable. For a single heartbeat, Laura froze. Not because she didn't love him, not because she couldn't accept him, but because hearing the words spoken aloud made everything real in a new way. This was no longer an unspoken question drifting in the back of her mind. This was her son, her child, standing at the edge of something unknown, asking her to see him fully. Her heart began to pound hard fast everywhere at once. In her chest, in her throat, behind her eyes. She reached for his hand slowly, deliberately, and held it. Thank you, she said quietly. Thank you for trusting me with something this big. His shoulders trembled. I didn't know how to say it. He whispered. I didn't even know if I should. Laura squeezed his hand gently. I know it wasn't easy. He finally looked at her. His eyes were glossy, afraid, searching. I don't even know who I am anymore, Mom. He admitted. I feel like everything I thought about myself is suddenly different, and I'm scared. The words came faster now, breaking free after being held back too long. I'm scared people will judge me. I'm scared I won't fit in. I'm scared I'll lose my friends. He hesitated. I'm scared I'll disappoint you. That one hit her hardest. The idea that he had carried that fear alone. Laura did not hesitate. She pulled him into her arms and held him tightly. He buried his face against her shoulder, and she felt his breath hitch, felt the quiet sob he tried desperately to suppress. You could never disappoint me, she whispered firmly. Never. The rain continued tapping against the window, steady, patient, constant. You don't have to face this alone, she continued softly. We'll figure it out together, step by step. He clung to her like he had when he was 5 years old and afraid of the dark. And in that moment, Laura felt the full weight of motherhood settle over her again. The fierce love, the protectiveness, the fear of a world that can be unkind to those who dare to be vulnerable. She knew something he didn't yet fully understand. Love cannot shield someone from every wound, but standing beside them can give them the strength to heal. They stayed like that for a long time, long enough for the tea to grow colder, long enough for the rain to soften further, long enough for Ethan's breathing to steady against her shoulder. Eventually, he pulled back slightly, wiping at his eyes with the sleeve of his hoodie, embarrassed by his tears. Sorry, he muttered. For what? Laura asked gently. For all of this? She shook her head. There is nothing about this that requires an apology. He stared at her, unsure whether to believe it. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Anything. Did you ever know? The question wasn't accusatory. It was tentatively curious. Laura considered her answer carefully. I knew something was on. Your heart, she said honestly. I didn't know exactly what, but I could feel that you were carrying something heavy. He nodded slowly. I've been trying to figure it out for years, he confessed. I thought maybe it was just a phase or confusion. I kept telling myself it would go away. And did it? She asked softly. He shook his head. No, it just got louder. Laura felt that answer in her bones. Sometimes the truest parts of ourselves do not fade with time. They grow stronger when ignored. I didn't want to tell anyone. Ethan continued. I thought if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real. She met his eyes. Sometimes saying something out loud doesn't make it real, she said. It just makes it honest. The rain slowed outside, becoming more of a mist than a storm. What happens now? He asked quietly. It was the question beneath all the others. What changes? What stays the same? Who will I be tomorrow? Laura took a slow breath. Now, she said gently, we move at your pace. You don't owe the world an announcement. You don't owe anyone explanations. You don't have to decide. Everything tonight? He let out a breath he'd been holding. You're still you. She continued. The same boy who laughs too loud at his own jokes. The same one who leaves cereal bowls in the sink. The same one who hugs me when he thinks I've had a bad day. A faint smile tugged at his lips. You're not becoming someone new, she said. You're just understanding yourself more clearly. His eyes filled again, but this time not entirely with fear. What if Dad doesn't understand? He asked carefully. There was another layer of vulnerability. Laura didn't dismiss the question. We'll talk to him together when you're ready, she said, and we'll have that conversation with patience, just like this one. Ethan nodded slowly. And if someone at school says something, he added, then we face it together, she replied. And we remind you that other people's discomfort does not define your worth. Silence settled again, but this time it felt different. Not heavy, not suffocating. It felt like space to breathe, space to think, space to exist without pretending. The rain finally stopped. Outside, the street lights reflected off damp pavement, casting everything in a quiet glow. The world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. Nothing had shattered, but something had shifted. Not in fear, in truth. Ethan slid off the stool and stood. He looked taller again somehow, not because he had grown physically, but because the weight he'd been carrying had lightened. Thank you, he said softly. Laura stood too. You never have to thank me for loving you. He hesitated before speaking again. I was really scared to tell you. I know, she said. I thought maybe you'd look at me differently. She stepped closer and placed her hands on either side of his face. I am looking at you differently, she said. His breath caught. I'm looking at you with even more respect because it takes courage to speak your truth. And you just did. He exhaled shakily. For the first time in days, she saw something return to his eyes. Light. Not certainty. Not all the answers, but hope. And hope is enough for a beginning. Later that night, after Ethan went upstairs, Laura remained in the kitchen alone. The silence felt softer now. She picked up her mug, now completely cold, and finally stopped stirring it. Her mind replayed the conversation in fragments. The tremble in his voice, the way his fingers tightened around his sleeve, the fear in his eyes when he said he didn't want to disappoint her. She thought about the world he would walk into tomorrow, a world that could be compassionate, but also cruel. She thought about the years ahead, about how she would need to listen, more than she spoke, learn more than she assumed, protect without suffocating. Parenthood, she realized again, is not about shaping a child into who you expect them to be. It is about standing beside them as they discover who they already are. Upstairs, she heard the faint sound of Ethan's bedroom door close. And in that small, quiet house, under a sky that had finally cleared, something powerful had taken place. Not a dramatic transformation, not a loud declaration, but a moment of trust. And trust, once given, changes everything. If you've ever been the one holding a truth inside, wondering if speaking it would change the way you're loved, if you've ever sat in silence rehearsing words that felt too heavy to say, or if you've ever been the person someone trusted with their most fragile truth, then you understand. The rain may begin gently, but sometimes what follows is clarity.